Now, Nigeria is still losing about 400,000 barrels of crude oil daily to oil theft, despite efforts to end the menace. Well, that's according to the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu. Meanwhile, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Heineken Lokpoberi, reassures that the Port Harcourt refinery will be functional by December this year. Oyeyemi Oke, partner to AO2 Law, joins me now for more on these stories. Oyeyemi, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Esther. Good afternoon.
Now, we have yet another but powerful government delegation led this time by the National Security Advisor to the Niger Delta region to reassess and just take a look at, this lingering menace of oil theft. So what do you make of this visit? Let's start there. What was said, and we heard the NSA say a lot of things, but what we didn't exactly hear is, what the strategy is going to be this time. But I'll let you speak on that.
Okay, thanks again, Esther. With regards to the, visit by the National Security Advisor and the Ministers of Defense, alongside the Minister of Oil State, essentially it shows how serious the issue of oil theft has become for the Nigerian economy. In the last few weeks, we've seen some of the efforts by both Nigerian security forces and private security consultants on efforts to curb oil theft. The figures which were mentioned by the National Security Advisor, in my view, were actually quite conservative, because there are two types of losses perhaps that come to mind. The first will be production losses as a result of actual production, which maybe you see theft at the pipelines, or perhaps at the point of taking them to the relevant terminals. Now, that's one. The other part of the loss, which perhaps we can't quantify, is actually the loss of production in itself. When I say loss of production, you see instances whereby pipelines have been shut. Some operators have actually shut in some of their wells because there is the issue of production getting to zero, perhaps between the wellhead and up to the terminal. By the time you get to the terminal, you see the production actually is zero because of pipeline vandalization. Over 12 months, between March of last year and March of this year, the operator of the TransNiger pipeline, which is Shell, said that because of the shutting of that pipeline alone, Nigeria lost about 2.3 trillion naira over a period of 1 year. So in terms of how serious the issue is, I think it is actually dire, it is actually grave, particularly because this issue affects our income as a nation. Now, your second question with regards to strategy, perhaps because it's a security matter, we may not necessarily hear public declarations as to the strategy to be employed with regards to curbing the menace.
Right. That being said, before now, the previous administration, you're aware, I believe we had that conversation about that major military operation that was ordered by the former President Buhari, and we did see in the immediate term some success. We did see production go up, but it would appear that it sort of dwindled away. And in the last 2 months, between, I believe, June and July, we're doing just about 1 million barrels, still higher than what it was when, oil theft was at its peak last year. Now, analysts continue to tell us that, look, because many of these pipelines run through remote, swampy areas, it's difficult, to completely 100%, achieve surveillance, as it were. But they also insist that, look, until we deploy perhaps technology at maybe 90 or 100%, just like, for example, Saudi Aramco has done, where they sort of know and can track every drop of oil, not to be too dramatic. Until then, if we do not achieve that, then we will continue to go around in circles where, from administration to administration, we keep talking about oil theft and new illegal pipelines and connections, discovered, now and then. What are your thoughts?
So, the challenge with regards to oil theft is not only, I don't think violence or military intervention will be the lone solution, right? You would also need to look at issues such as what are the triggers for things like this, right? The first that comes to mind would be some of the activities of persons living along the delta in terms of some of their sustenance in terms of livelihood has been threatened. And again, we need to look at that. The environmental impact has also driven some of the actions whereby you now have pipeline vandalism. If you have someone who cannot feed as a result of perhaps waters that have been polluted, and the person, has to look for a way to feed and perhaps resort to violence or resort to theft and vandalism. This is not me making a case for those that are engaged in this nefarious act, but again, my point is that you don't look at violence or military intervention as a lone solution. You also have to effectively engage with the communities. You also have to ensure that employments are created so that persons who are driven to crime, to activities such as this, would also look away from those crimes. So in my view, it's not a one solution fits all. There are various aspects of this, and there are various triggers to this, and this needs a wholesome approach and not just a lone solution of military intervention.
Right. Thank you for talking to us today. We'll keep our fingers crossed on, this the new strategy and as it unfolds to curb this oil theft menace. That was Oyeyemi Oke, partner at AO2 Law.